say in a slightly related issue, as a native Chicagoan, if you're over the age of 10, ketchup does not belong on a hot dog. I'm sorry, people, but
I'm definitely a mustard person. But I watched.
Okay, Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, Dirty Harry. Yeah, I watched Dirty Harry.
Who the hell puts ketchup on a hot dog?
I like mustard, ketchup, and sauerkraut. So, boom.
To each their own.
And I'm well over the age of.
Yeah, hopefully, or else I'm gonna get arrested.
Doesn't make you right.
But anyway,
Klee, not Ed. Yeah, you would definitely be arrested if she was under 10.
Yeah. But
although in France this week, just to change the topic in a real off tangent, the age of consent in France is legally 15.
Yep.
Because they didn't have one before, and someone raped a couple 11-year-olds. Mm-hmm. So
gotta be the food. Gotta be the food.
You know what? I think 15 doesn't seem all that bad.
Watch it. You're going to get in trouble. I work at juvenile hall.
Well, and here's...
I've been to juvenile hall, so...
Here's the thing, though. Physically, we were talking earlier, Ty, you were saying, no one wants a stupid woman. And, there are people... There was a big stink, as long as... Let's bring this back into the world of comedy. There was a big stink last week or recently... because someone posted pictures on Facebook of Dane Cook, who's in his 40s, and his girlfriend, who's like 19.
Yeah.
And, whatever. I'm not going to judge.
Too. Like, an age of consent at 15 is fine.
Yeah, what do they say?
Also,
like, half your age plus 7?
Than 20, let's
but
say.
Also, this is what I would this is what I would love to do. If I could die, if somebody said, okay, you have to forfeit your life, but these two things will be firmly cemented after you go, I would die happy with these two things right here. Number one, we decide what the fuck a fact is. That's okay. That's number one. We decide what a fact is and we stick to it. Okay. And number two, stop telling little girls they're more mature than little boys. Because when I was a kid, there were 16-year-old bitches fucking 35-year-old dudes because they bought this bullshit myth that just because they had some titties and they was taller than all the little boys, that they were grown-ass women. And they were fucking not. They could have kids. They could do all kind of stuff that a woman does. Absolutely. In some third world country, you'd be a fucking grandma at 16. Fine. But that doesn't mean that's how we're supposed to do it over here in the goddamn future.
Trouble, man.
We're over here in the goddamn future. We're in the Wakanda of the world. Okay? So stop with this bullshit that a 15-year-old girl raised in this society where they're playing with fucking dolls until they're 20 fucking years old and nobody pays for their own shit until they're 40. Stop telling me that a 16-year-old girl is capable of making the intellectual decision to fuck a 35-year-old man. Just stop it, stop it, stop it. And it isn't just about consent laws. It's about stopping these little kids from these myths. Little boys are immature and they're dumb. Well, a little boy will manipulate a little 16-year-old girl and doing a lot of bad stuff.
We play catch a girl, pump a girl. Yeah, it works.
All that stuff. All that old stuff.
That sounds horrifying.
That yucky.
Everybody was involved.
Yucky old sexual politics stuff. Because women were told, well, oh, you're 15, you're done growing, so that older agrarian white dudes, basically, or Mr. Seeley from Color Purple Black dudes, could have them a 15-year-old wife. We sold girls on, oh, well, when you're 15, you're just as grown as you're ever going to be.
I think consent
That's
law,
bullshit.
Consent laws, I think, are different though than what's it called? Consent. When it's like rape, but it's not really rape.
Not consent.
Yeah, than statutory laws. So I think the age of consent is like if two 15-year-olds fuck, that's completely different than if a 15-year-old fucks a 24-year-old. And I think like if two 15-year-olds fuck, because in some states in America, if two 15-year-olds have sex, technically that's against the law. I don't think that necessarily should be. I agree with that. I think that's where consent comes in, where it's like if two 15 or a 15 and a 16-year-old or a 16 and a 17-year-old have sex, but once somebody is like technically an adult, I think it should be around 19. Well, you have sex with somebody who's under the age of 16, that's where it becomes, just wait. You're going to have to wait. I know it's hard. I know your hormones are telling you, no, pump her full of jizz or give me all that jizz inside of me.
Right.
Like, I think that, I mean, it's hard, but you gotta wait, or you're gonna, like, and it should be, and I don't think the punishment should necessarily be harsh, but there should be a little bit of a consequence, because you do have to make them the choice, and a 20-year-old, and how much growing a human being does between the age of, like, 12 or 13 to 19, 20, and for men, sometimes up to 23, is so fast and so huge. It's like you completely change. Like I watch a lot of like kids cooking shows, like, and like you see, like I've been watching one, and it's like a little 10-year-old girl, and sometimes like some little kids look very mature, like you can hardly see what they look like as an adult. It's like a 10-year-old girl. Like in 10 years, she'll be 20 years old, and she will be a completely different person in just 10 short years. Once you get over like 25, time seems to like just speed the fuck up. I'm old, and I'm not going to say my age on the air. I say it sometimes on the internet, so it's not hard to find out. But it's like the last 10 years of my life have flown by.
Well, I think and you're from Northern California, so it's a little different. My theory on that, though, because coming from the Midwest, is growing up with seasons.
Yeah.
Then you move out. I've been in LA for like 18 years now, and it has gone by so much more quickly, seemingly. I think partially because of the age factor that when you do like reach a certain age,
and a 35-year-old is so much closer than the difference between a 25 and a 15-year-old, and that's where the difference comes.
Well, I was going to.
We don't take into account actual biology.
When we look at our parents,
it's all moral. And it's like, no, it's nothing to do with morality. It has to do with biology. Yeah. It's gross.
When we look at our parents, though, I mean, my dad was 22, my mom was 16. Mm-hmm. Black men went into the service at 16 years old, and to fight. I mean, they had to immediately turn into adults because they wanted the benefits for the families.
Yeah.
So, you're born in 1929, you go into the service at 16 years old, you're fighting for a country that when you get out, hell, they'll lynch your ass in your own damn uniform. You still weren't even allowed to. And so I asked my mother, I said, well, it's 8 of us. So I asked my mother, I said, hey, what about Tiffany? She said, oh, well, boy, birth control didn't come in until 64. Mm-hmm. So, they used to have baby races.
Yeah.
So, you had, here you are at 16, trying to finish high school, and you're having babies, and, I mean, you're going to church, and then all she wanted to be was a housewife. And next year, you're having all these kids. And
my dad was born in 1930. My mom was born in 1950. So
and so
baby races sounds like the Kentucky Derby version of the
Puppy Bowl.
They
were out trying to have. My aunt had 7.
What's on after the
8.
Kentucky Derby? Oh, the baby races.
Yeah,
excellent.
They were doing these.
I heard baby racist. Like I saw a little baby.
Yeah, that's why I heard baby racist too. I was like, baby racist.
Yeah,
and it's starting early. This kid's a prodigy.
It's like they're there.
Well, we only have a few minutes left, but since we're talking about the age, I do want to bring this back to the topic that we were talking about is big in the news this week, because Florida passed a law in response to the shootings in Parkland that has led to the NRA suing Florida and Rick Scott, the governor of Florida, because Florida is raising the age at which you can legally buy a rifle from 18 to 21. Which kind of seems to make sense to me,
the only common sense thing Florida has done in quite some time.
Yeah, well, they still decided to arm the teachers as part of this whole law, so it's
every teacher is like, no, but please don't.
Yeah,
please don't.
My sister's a teacher, and she doesn't want a gun. I don't want her having guns. I'm sure some of her students really don't want her having guns.
Oh.
But
the teachers that had guns when we were kids, like, how many of us would be dead?
Yeah, I told a story on the show last week about an algebra teacher I had in high school who threw a piece of chalk at one of my friends who was sleeping in class and hit someone else. Yeah, and it's like teachers deal with chalk every day.
Yeah,
if he can't handle chalk, I certainly don't want him, having a gun.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm sorry I killed Tony. I was just trying to wake Zorba up. It's like, yeah, that doesn't,
And honestly, I really do think, what's awful about this whole shit what's awful about this whole shit is I hate how it's okay for us to have so many regulations on everything but guns. And obviously, yes, guns have many regulations. I'm not saying they don't have any. I'm saying, for the most part, they have enough if they're enforced. But one of my friend Rich Slayton, he was talking about like, well, you see, and he's not this type of person. But every time I talk about him, I make him out to be this person. So he's not. He's very well rounded. He's my best good little Jewish friend. But here's the thing, and he's very college educated. He's got his little African American. I think he has a minor in African American studies. You know, he's one of those. He tried hard to understand. But every now and again, I'll catch him being a real white man on certain things. And he was explaining to me, not mansplaining, but explaining that the problem is the databases that check whether or not you're a psycho, whether or not you have a record and stuff like that, aren't quite as up to date as other databases. I'm like, you know what? Fuck all that. Because when I go to the Maserati dealership and I put my card down and I try to buy a Maserati with my Chase Liquid cash card, okay, a satellite gets a signal instantaneously that says I'm a broke Negro and kick me out, throw me through the window like Axel Foley. That's what it says, instantaneously. But for some reason, it takes 10 days. It takes 2 years to process a rape kit. It takes 10 days to process whether or not I was a criminal and I could buy this gun or not. That's bullshit. It's obfuscation. It's obvious that the certain powers that be want it to be easier to buy a gun than to get a Maserati. Or to do, you know what I'm saying? All these different things. So it's like, just as fast as they could check my debit card, they could check that Nicholas Cruz's kid's criminal record. Well, even and how many times the cops got called at him 17 to 20 times or something like that.
Even if you're not talking about the faults in the system, you know, that are built in, you know, one of the first things that Trump did when he came into office was get rid of a law that Obama signed that made it hard, if not made it, you know, impossible for people who are mentally ill to get guns. You know, it's the lack of the Republicans are so anti-regulation. Well, some regulations are good, and I've said this on the show before. I think liberals need to own the Second Amendment. We need to, we are so pro-Second Amendment that we're actually going to support the whole thing, including the part about the well-regulated militia. Yeah. Well-regulated. It's right in there. It's in the Constitution, people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they kept that off. Even the NRA doesn't have that well-regulated on there.
No.
They took it off.
Well, it's inconvenient.
Well, but and also that's another thing.
It's an inconvenient truth.
But see, that's another thing.
That would be a great move.
Well, Republicans think that we're coddling mental illness by being okay with trans people or being okay with gay people or anything like that. You know, they think we're coddling mental illness by being okay with people who are of different persuasions and different orientations and stuff. We think they're coddling insanity by being like, you don't got to be well regulated. Just a bunch of assholes, bunch of bubbas with guns is just the same as a well regulated militia, or a bunch of crazy assholes who are racist are just the same as a well regulated militia. We just need to, again, let's decide what a fact is, guys. Yeah, let's just decide.
Well, and also, regulated militia goes back to before we had an armed forces in this country.
Right.
When you had to arm farmers and shit, if we were to be invaded by a foreign force, or if our own government became against the people fully whole hog. So it's not about
the half-ass job they're doing currently.
And it's like we're not coming for your guns. It's like, no, this law was put into effect before we had the Army and the Navy and the Marines and the Air Force and the Coast Guard and all this type of stuff.
But there were also a bunch of Brits who were...
So, and it's before the British government. The British government ain't got no interest in coming here. Neither does Canada. Neither does Mexico. Nobody has any interest in coming over here. Trump is courting North Korea like, please come on, get on over here. And maybe now we might need a well-regulated militia, but we don't want it to be a bunch of bubbas with guns. We don't want it to be Randy Quaid in Independence Day, armed and
we'd rather be Bill Pullman.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Yeah. Well, that kind of. I guess that's a good point to end on. That's, we are out of time. So I do want to thank you guys for coming in and we'll go around the room. Ed, you got anything coming up that you want to promote?
Yes. My podcast, Nerd Goat, we talk to interesting people about their nerd greatest of all time, their favorite fictional character. That's blowing up on Bail Bonds Media. You can check it out on iTunes.
So not an actual goat.
Yes, it's not about an actual goat. Also, I'm going to be on New Negroes on Comedy Central, so check your local listings. It's a TV show called The New Negroes with Baron Vaughn and Open Mike Eagle, and it's I think it'll be very popular. And Hannibal Buress will be on the first episode with myself.
Oh, right on. And where can people find you online on the social media and things?
At Ed Greer Destroys on all social media. Ed Greer Destroys.
Boy, howdy. All right, Klee Wiggins, thank you for coming in. You got anything coming up?
Yeah.